Hello, hello, hello. Good morning. Yeah, you guys can hear me. I know that for sure. All right. You guys can hear me now, right? Can I get a comment? Drop me a like. Drop me a comment so I can see if it's showing up on my side. So today is going to be quick and easy. I just wanted to pretty much, do this live session. It's a good way to stay on our practice. Oh, hey, Micah. Hello. Nice. Micah, how are you? I don't know if you guys can see that or not. Okay, I don't know if you guys can see that, but it looks like I'm posting. I see you guys. I appreciate the mentions. So we're gonna get into Proverbs 14. So the whole idea here is essentially to read a proverb a day. Let me turn the jams down. So the whole idea here is to read a proverb a day. There's 31, and so obviously you read one on the day that corresponds with that day of the month. So I'm going to do a share screen. So if you're driving, obviously, please stay focused on the road. And then I don't imagine this to be more than 30 to 35 minutes. I'm reading out of the English Standard Version of the Bible, which is pretty cool. So we're going to go ahead and begin reading here. Awesome. Okay, let's see here. So let me go ahead and share my screen with you guys. Doom, doom, doom. That music was nice. Doom, 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 doom. All right. So this is what we have here. Okay. You guys should be able to see this pretty clearly. If you can't, please just drop me a note in the comments. I don't want to print. Just want to make it a little larger. Okay. Hopefully you can see that. All right. I'm gonna blow this up, so it's pretty easy to. All right. Cool. So it's now 6:58. My goal is to be out of here by 7:30. If you have any questions, anything that you want to talk about, or anything that's coming up for you, I'm making myself available. So please, do just let me know. Okay, so the wisest of women builds her house, but folly with her own hands tears it down. Whoever walks in uprightness fears the Lord, but he who is devious in his way despises him. By the mouth of by the mouth of a fool comes a rod for his back, but the lips of the wise will preserve them. Where there are no oxen, the manger is clean, but abundant crops come by the strength of the ox. A faithful witness does not lie, but a false witness breathes out lies. A scoffer seeks wisdom in vain, but knowledge is easy for a man of understanding. Leave the presence of a fool, for there you do not meet words of knowledge. The wisdom of the prudent is to discern his way, but the folly of fools is deceiving. Fools mock at the guilt offering, but the upright enjoy acceptance. The heart knows its own bitterness, and no stranger shares its joy. The house of the wicked will be destroyed, but the tent of the upright will flourish. There is a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way to death. That's powerful. Even in laughter, the heart may ache, and the end of joy may be grief. The backslider in heart will be filled with the fruit of his ways, and a good man will be filled with the fruit of his ways. The simple believes everything, but the prudent gives thought to his steps. One who is wise is cautious and turns away from evil, but a fool is reckless and careless. A man of quick temper acts foolishly. A man of evil devices is hated. The simple inherit folly, but the prudent are crowned with knowledge. The evil bow down before the good, the wicked at the gates of the righteous. The poor is disliked even by his neighbor, but the rich has many friends. Whoever despises his neighbor is a sinner, but blessed is he who is generous to the poor. Do not, do they not go astray who devise evil? Those who devise good meet steadfast love and faithfulness. In all toil there is profit, but mere talk tends only to poverty. The crown of the wise is their wealth, but the folly of fools brings folly. Folly means like foolishness, for anybody who's out there who may wonder. And I actually, as I started, I'll tell you the story. Let me finish this first. A truthful witness saves lives, but one who breathes out lies is deceitful. In the fear of the Lord, one has strong confidence, and his children will have a refuge. The fear of the Lord is a fountain of life, that one may turn away from the snares of death. In a multitude of people is the glory of a king, but without people, a prince is ruined. Whoever is slow to anger has great understanding, but he who has a hasty temper exalts folly. A tranquil heart gives life to the flesh, but envy makes the bones rot. Whoever oppresses a poor man insults his maker, but he who is generous to the needy honors him. The wicked is overthrown through his evil doing, but the righteous finds refuge in his death. Wisdom rests in the heart of the man of understanding, but it makes itself known even in the midst of the fools. Righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. A servant who deals wisely has the king's favor, but his wrath falls on one who acts shamefully. Now, why do we study this, or why does any of this matter? Well, the whole purpose here is to get closer to God. And the only way to do that is by studying his word. So, for everybody who's joined me for this first live session, the reason why I've been inspired to come straight to the Bible, and this is more recently, I've had a more like a stronger calling to do it. But the reason why is because I read this book called The Power of the Subconscious Mind. Okay. And after I read the book, I came to this, I read it 4 times in like the matter of maybe a month and a half, right? 2 months. And as I read this book, I was like, man, there's so many gems in here. And The Power of the Subconscious Mind talks about like all of the things that we think about, that obviously that's just pretty much running in the background, right? And it tells you powers about manifestation and how we're extensions of God and we're so powerful and all of these things. But there was something inside of me that was yearning for more, like a lot more. And I was like looking online, I was doing research, and I was watching videos and listening to all these audio clips, and I'm like, man, I just don't feel fulfilled. I was just searching for information for the next book, and it was just I was very enthusiastic about it, but I was like, man, what? So I stopped and I was like, okay, what am I being told? And then as I stopped and I listened, I started to hear the calling of God. And I was like, well, hold on. I've read Eckhart Tolle. I've read, which is your Think and Grow Rich books. I have, you have your, what other books? You have Tony Robbins, you have Les Brown, you have just so many, I can't name them all. Excuse me. I've been up for a while, but my point is all of these books have these universal truths that if we adopt them, oftentimes our life will improve because the way we look at things is totally altered by these new mental frameworks. So I'm gonna jump back into scripture here. But my point is, instead of pulling pieces, from all of these different books or trying to find the next book to fulfill this thing that I was looking for, which was inevitably the feeling of getting closer to God, I said, let me read the Bible. And I downloaded the audiobook first. It's like 98 hours on Audible. And then the app kept crashing, right? So, but I listened to that, and even like within the first chapter, I think it was Genesis, as I was reading it, like there were so many gems, and I was like, wow. Like usually in these other books of enlightenment, right, where you're trying to do these self-help, examinations and trying to be a better person, and you're reading about, emotional intelligence, how to control your anger, all these things, right? They have books for all this, like, mental health and psychological health and all this stuff, right? You got all these books, and I read literally like one chapter or just a couple pages in the Bible, and then instantly, like, so many questions in my mind had been answered that I wasn't even looking to be answered. But some of the lines or the verses in Proverbs that stand out to me, and please, everyone, you more than welcome to chime in. But I have the study Bible, and this is pretty profound because it helps elaborate on some things with regard to the text that you wouldn't normally know unless you're ultra versed, like you've read through the Bible several times and or have went to school and have studied it to a T. So let me see here. So a good man leaves an inheritance to his children. This is, oh, excuse me, nope, wrong one. That's for 13. A scoffer seeks wisdom in vain. So this is number 6. Let me take us there. Okay, so right here. A scoffer seeks wisdom in vain, but knowledge is easy for a man of understanding. So this verse in particular, I actually really liked. Let me break it down. This is 14:5-7. And I'm going to continue reading here. Leave the presence of a fool, for there you do not meet words of knowledge. The wisdom of the prudent is to discern his way, but the folly of fools is deceiving. Now, these verses, as referenced, like I said, by the ESV standard of the Bible, these verses refer to character manifested in part through speech, the faithful versus the false witness, the scoffer or the lack of words of knowledge from a fool, and the implication that such words can be found with a man of understanding. The verses appear to be prescriptive as well as descriptive. And prescriptive is described as walk the path of the faithful witness, as well as descriptive, look out for those who manifest lying, scoffing, and foolishness. The Lord desires that his people be faithful witnesses of the Ten Commandments. That was a verse that stood out to me. And I think this, especially now during our time, when there's so many mediums to be receiving information, is very, very important. And I believe that if we're going to seek knowledge, we have to seek true knowledge, like full knowledge, and that's very, very important. But it's what I've learned in my journey and how this applies to me is there's a lot of people out there who will pretend as if they have the answer. And I think oftentimes, even as people, when we're searching for the answer, we look outwardly trying to find the answer. Like there's somebody out there who can help fulfill, a void or something that we may have. And so I think this verse or these verses in particular call me to not only be more accountable for the things that I say, right? And then, but also, and I heard in another lecture actually that if a person tells us, right, or says, "Hey, I've done such and such," right, that we should believe them for the face value, right? And then, generally speaking, as you give a person time to grow, or as you start to grow in a brotherhood or grow in a sisterhood with another person, then you eventually will see, who their true essence is or what their true essence is about. And so when I read this, leave the presence of a fool, I feel like sometimes we can find ourselves in situations or around people who aren't necessarily the best for us. And so rather than recognizing some of the things that they say in passing or some of their behaviors that they do that you may not be okay with, understand and recognize, right? You are the company that you keep. But I feel like these verses in particular are pretty much saying like it's important to be aware of your surroundings, right? And to give people the space to show you who they really are over time. And then from there, you can build good brotherhood, good sisterhood, good fellowship, good relationships, good forever partnerships as well. Another verse that was really good for me, or that resonated with me this week was, let me see here. The wisdom of the prudent is to discern his way, but the folly of fools is deceiving. Let me see here. Oh, no, excuse me. We just read that. Let me see here. Let me see here. I have these highlighted. Oh, this one right here. Okay. The simple believes everything, but the prudent gives thoughts to his steps. One who is cautious and turns away from evil, but a fool is reckless and careless. So when I go to the study notes here, it says the wise give thought to his path and turns away from evil. Um, in contrast, the fool is reckless on his path. A quality of heart that is aggravated further by quick temper and results in being hated for its ruinous effects. So I feel like, let me see here. So I feel like for this part of the discussion, um, first off, I believe, first off, I believe there's so many things going through my mind right now because I'm getting some of these verses mixed up with the other with some of the other proverbs that I read over the last week, in terms of like my feeling about them. But I think the biggest steps here for me are one who is wise is cautious and turns away from evil, but a fool is reckless and careless. And I think that bleeds back into verses 6 through 8 that we just read. But this stands out to me for this week, in particular, because it's easy to be associated with a group of people rather than find your own independence. And during a time, especially now of a time, I seek fellowship with my brothers and my sisters, in a tremendous way. But along that way, we can sacrifice, right, our moral integrity and who we are as people to have a feeling of connectivity and connection with other people. And the reason why I like this verse in particular is because, like most of them, it requires us to take responsibility for the decisions that we're making on a daily basis. And why does any of this matter? Well, I believe from a universal standpoint, right? It's important to be responsible for your actions. And the moment that we take it upon ourselves to say, yes, the reason why I said such and such outcome came out is maybe because I didn't prepare, right? Ultimately, it's God's will, but we have the power of choice. But when you take responsibility for the things that happen to you, with regard to some of the events leading up to certain decisions that you make, I think that your life will change, dramatically. And then when you surrender, right, um, and let go of this idea that you have to control everything, then you start to flow with life rather than kind of just go through life. And so in combination with both of these verses, just with the interest of time for me and not going, I can talk about another one. I can talk about another verse, and it's 28. We'll go into one more. But really, I think for this weekend in particular, or with this proverb in particular, that these 2 points stand out to me because I'm a person who believes that we should take a tremendous amount of responsibility for our actions. And then we should also be mindful of the company that we keep, and we shouldn't keep it for the sake of convenience. But then we're also leaving people the space to, constantly evolve and constantly be better. If you decide to, or if you decide to continue to have them around. Now, the last one I'm going to talk about is right here, verse 28. So, verse 28, in a multitude of people is the glory of a king. And that's just what we were just talking about. But without a prince, or excuse me, but without people, a prince is ruined. So let me just keep reading. I'm just going to go all the way to 35. So whoever is slow to anger has great understanding, but he who has a hasty temper exalts foolishness or folly. A tranquil heart gives life to the flesh, but envy makes the bones rot. Whoever oppresses a poor man insults his maker, but he who is generous to the needy honors him. The wicked is overthrown through his evil doing, but the righteous finds refuge in his death. What did I say I was going to go to? This is 28 through 35, so two more. Wisdom rests in the heart of a man of understanding, but it makes itself known even in the midst of fools. Actually, yeah. Okay, so righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. A servant who deals wisely has the king's favor, but his wrath falls on one who acts shamefully. And there's a couple key parts about this that stand out for me before I actually read the ESV educate interpretation. Whoever is slow to anger has great understanding. I read another book that I can't quote right now, but it's a very they introduce a very cool concept where it, there was some phrase that said, "Never give your pride and joy or your happiness to another person." And I was blown away by that when I heard that because it makes you take responsibility for the way that you feel. So if you're feeling depressed today, right? Um, if you're feeling depressed today for whatever reason or feeling down, and you know that you have God on your side, you also have the ability to alter or change the way that you feel by certain things or decisions or thoughts that you have, right? One very, very easy way that we practice in our family is just to get up and go, right? So get up and go for a walk, get up and go to the gym and just move the energy around, shake the energy around. But whoever is slow to anger has great understanding. This is something I think that's fundamentally missing or starting to be missed in our country, among easy dialogue among people. And being slow to anger, I believe, is just saving space for people to have their opinion. We can be in the same exact room talking about a topic, and you could be on the total opposite of that, right? And we can still have a conversation and not fall out because we're slow. I believe the idea of being slow to anger, meaning you have a level of understanding and you give people the space to have their opinions, and I believe that's the way of God. This is verse 29. But he who hasty temper exalts foolishness. And usually, when we're in a state of anger, what do? We make stupid decisions. We say things we don't mean, right? So taking a break from a conversation or coming back to it later is always a good thing. Now, this is really popular to like in my mind. Like this idea is something that I see often. The wicked is overthrown through his evil doing. The righteous finds refuge in his death. Let me see here. Whoever oppresses a poor man insults his maker, but he who is generous to the needy honors him. This is a pretty powerful statement to me because I think oftentimes people get it mistaken that if somebody doesn't have what you have, right, that they're less than you. And one of the philosophies I've started, even in all of my businesses that we have, is it doesn't matter who it is. Every single person is $1 million client, or $1 million client. Period. And every relationship that we have, I came up with this new concept. I actually learned it from a rabbi that I heard speaking, and he said, and listen how beautiful this is, you guys. He said, money is incredible. And the reason why money is incredible is because it is one of the purest ways that people have an opportunity to interact and execute God's will. So oftentimes when people say, "Oh, and there's certain men, people out there, gurus or whatever, will say, if you have a bad relationship with money, then it's going to be harder for you to manifest it. If you say, "Oh, it's nasty, it's disgusting," this, that, and the third. And so to hear this perspective, right, where it's like money is not a bad thing. It's actually, if you view it this way, it can be a very beautiful thing, right? So you imagine you have a customer who comes into the store, right? They come to your storefront. You own a convenience store. They come in, they have, what do they have to pay, right? They have cash. They put that down on the table, they buy the candy bar, and right there, you just had an opportunity to connect with somebody, right? Because I don't believe that God put us on this earth to be alone or not to be connected. I believe that we're made to actually be in community with each other. But technology has done a really great job dividing us, right? And keeping us alone with our own thoughts. And I don't think that's the most healthy situation. But nonetheless, you have a gentleman or a gentlelady who comes in, they put their money on the table. They normally wouldn't go to that store if they didn't have a need, right? Or how else would they pay? They have this money, but there's an exchange that's happening. So now when I go through my day on a daily basis, whether it be a clerk at the store, sometimes they have really bad attitudes, so God, please forgive me. Or somebody who comes to one of our storefronts, it is a perfect opportunity to use money, right, to do a transaction with a person, which ultimately If I'm operating in good faith and I say, hey, I care about you getting what you feel you're buying. So if you're buying this because of a said value, I want to sell this to you because you believe it's said value. And in exchange, you give me your cash or your money or your currency, and then we make a deal happen, right? And then you went out and you earned that money, you got that money, however you did, and we get to execute God's will using money. And it was a really beautiful concept to hear. But my point here is that was just a concept, like a mindset to kind of consider in terms of how you look at money. It can be a beautiful. Money is a wonderful thing. It's an incredible thing, and there's nothing wrong with loving money. However, right, whoever oppresses a poor man insults his maker, right? Because there's something so much bigger than obviously material things that we get to attain using money on earth. But he who is generous to the needy honors him. And so I'm going to get into the study part here, but there's one more section. There's one more verse here that I just want to talk about. And this kind of, it says, okay, so 35. So 35, I know you guys can't see this. My bad. I've been scrolling. You guys wouldn't be able to see this. Okay, so verse 35, a servant who deals wisely has the king's favor, but his wrath falls on one who acts shamefully. And the beautiful thing about God and Jesus Christ is that if you're saved, you don't have to deal with this type of wrath, quite frankly, right? Because because you're saved, right? You go through life, and now this is the part, right? You don't abuse the blessing of being saved, right? And knowing that you have favor in the eyes of God, right? And that because you're saved, you're not going to feel that wrath as you would a human being, let's say, for example, right? But then, in closing, right before I get to these last remarks from the book, but then it's our duty and our responsibility to constantly be evolving as people, right? And the way that we do that is by connecting with other people and by reading, the book, in my opinion, right? And you may not get straight to the Bible, and I'm not one to tell anybody out there who, where they should be or where they shouldn't be. But you can start with The Power of the Subconscious Mind, maybe some other book that has some level of enlightenment that can introduce you to universal and godly concepts that you may, be unfamiliar with or you may know about, just to give you mental frames on how to approach all this stuff when it comes to living life, how to be a good person spiritually and morally. And so I never want to be one who fits that mold of the king's, a servant who deals wisely, the king's favor, has the king's favor, but his wrath falls on one who acts shamefully. Now, verse 28 through 35, I'm in the ESV, both of which concern a king. From a frame for this paragraph contain various proverbs on the life and heart of an individual. A person must rule his heart with wisdom, understand that all are under a higher sovereign, and have confidence that the wicked, however powerful they are, will be cast down. A nation perishes if its people lack righteousness. Ultimately, many of the same rules that govern one person's life also govern a nation. And that's why, in closing, that's why I feel like, let me see here. Well, actually, let me keep going because that was just a general overview. Okay, the person who is slow to anger, which we talked about, this is verse 1429, reflects the Lord's character. The one who is righteous lives in fear of the Lord and thus finds refuge in his death because the Lord rewards him. Pause. So I looked up, I was like, what does it mean to fear the Lord? Like, what does it mean? What does that actually mean? And that means to pretty much turn away from evil, right? Or turn away from sin. Um, and so living as, probably, like I said, slow to anger is, reflecting the Lord's character here. Um, okay. Wisdom resides in the heart of the wise, but even in the midst of fools, it makes itself known by manifesting the effects of foolishness. The picture of wisdom calling out in the street to the simple and the effects of rejecting her reproof. Let me see here. Righteousness exalts a nation. Morally righteous behavior has far-reaching effects, especially in the administration of justice and the compassionate care of people. Both the moral behavior and the well-being of the people are exalted. And I feel like, like I said, in closing, I feel like this is powerful because I believe in our nation, and that nation is United States of America. And I believe in the world. I believe in people, quite frankly. And I believe that, in order for us to really, I think, continue moving the way that God wants us to move, it takes each and every one of us to individually be doing the work inside, right? Because anybody can be online and be a talking head and give their philosophy or give their opinions about things. All of that is actually spectacular. I appreciate it and I welcome it. But then, right, it's important for us to equip ourselves with the tools so that we can see, we could hear, and then we can discern, right, whether or not the information that we're consuming is the information that's meant for us to consume. For example, um, like before I got saved, I went to church. I'm gonna close up here. I went to church, right? And I remember the pastor was talking, and she said, she read this verb or this verse about, oh, the riches, a man and his riches won't make it into the kingdom of heaven, right? And then I kind of subtly felt like she was looking over at me a little bit, right? And I'm like, yeah, okay. Pretty pathetic. Okay, so then I said, but in my mind, right, because I'm trying to interpret and I'm interested to learn. And so my point here is then like after that, right, I would hear like certain things, during the service, and it just would kind of make me feel like a certain kind of way, right? Which is more so something that was happening with me. And then shortly thereafter, right, as I started getting into the word and I started reading, right, I'm one to like go back and actually reflect and say, hey, when you said this during the service, I felt some kind of way about it. And then I said, but then after, like, when you fast forward some time, I went and started reading and doing my research on the verses and what this all meant, right? So in one's normal mind, you might think, hey, a man who's rich or has has success, economic success in this fleshly body, right, can't make it to heaven. But that's not actually what what the scripture is talking about. And it's and for me the lesson was more so, God doesn't give it, God doesn't care about um the amount of wealth or money that you attain in this lifetime, right? The thing that he cares about the most is that you accept him as your Lord, your Lord Jesus Christ and Savior, and in your life. And then from there you get spiritual. You get wisdom, you get enlightenment, you start digging into the book, then you really actually start doing, God's work, right? As being a witness and sharing with people how he's had an impact on your life. Now, when I told her that, she looked at me, she's looked at me, she said, yeah, that's because now we're speaking the same language, right? And obviously I felt stupid, but we started laughing, right? But it was just amazing to me that, you can interpret things so many ways. And I was like, man, it's amazing how we could speak a different language of English, right? Like, how do we have two versions of English? But my point here is that it's our responsibility to serve, and the way that we can become a better nation, the way that we can be a better world, is by doing the work internally and then not being afraid to connect through fellowship. And the cool thing about, I feel like, our Bible readings on Thursdays, yes, this is a shameless plug, is that we can come together and we can talk about our experiences, we can read the book, and the cool thing is at the center of all of this is God. And I think that's a powerful thing. So with that, I want to thank everybody. It's 7:30 p.m. We've been online for 40 minutes. Um, my attempt, or my generous energy, is to do these every Tuesday between 6:30 and 6:45, and I'll usually announce the time. And it's only a range of time because I'm going to I'm at my business, and so sometimes I'm not available. But with that being said, I love you all. I hope you have an excellent evening. Remember, God is always with you, and that you have the choice, to live your best life. And with His help, it'll be an excellent life. So, love you guys. And if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them to me. And if you're available at 6:30 on Thursday, we're going to have Bible study in Renton. So much love, you guys. I'll see you next time.